So want to thank everybody and welcome everyone for joining the California Governor's Office of Emergency Services briefing for the next round of the Listos California grants. I am Alan Lang. I'm work with an organization called Valley Vision. We're a nonprofit group that has been contracted to help support the implementation of the Listos California project, an initiative for this current existing round of funding. We're also involved in the inaugural round of Listos California. I've been very fortunate to serve in that role and be able to work with so many great community-based organizations and others that are making the success possible of this program. I'm joined today by a few different colleagues from the California Office of Emergency Services who will be providing some updates on the grant opportunity, providing some introductions, what it is, what the purpose of the program is, et cetera. So we're really excited to be here with you all today to kick this off and let you know and hopefully answer some questions that you might have. Said a moment ago, I'll go ahead and repeat, we do have both Spanish language as well as sign language interpretation available. So if you want to do that, please go ahead and just click that interpretation button at the bottom of your screen. So getting into what are we covering today? This is an effort to really introduce the Listos California project. Some of you might be current grantees or former grantees. Others of you we probably have met with or seen over the past month during a lot of the winter weather activation that was taking place, and you joined us to hear about some of those activities. So we think probably a number of you are somewhat familiar with Listos California, but for those that might be hearing about this for the first time, an opportunity to really share and showcase what is Listos California and what are the opportunities that are ahead. So we'll begin with a just high-level overview of Listos California and the new funding opportunities that are here. We'll move into discussion about the different target populations that Listos California is trying to address and more detail about each one of those specific grant opportunities. We'll close it off by talking about some more specific training opportunities that Cal OES is going to be putting forward to help any potential interested parties respond to these grant opportunities. And then, of course, save a little bit of time for questions and answers that might come along the way. If you do have any questions throughout the course of this briefing, please use the Q&A function that is, again, at the should be a button at the bottom of your Zoom screen. So before we really get into some of the details about the grant itself, I wanted to start by just talking a little bit about what is Listos California. It was first launched in 2019, really as a pilot project that was done for a 2-year pilot project, really to try and serve as the state's trailblazing effort to help people at highest risk become more resilient for disasters such as heat waves, earthquakes, floods, wildfires, other natural disasters that might occur. Listos California really aims to provide California's vulnerable residents, those who may experience barriers due to age or health conditions, abilities or language, race or ethnicity, income status, any other factors that might really present a barrier or challenge to people getting prepared, to provide them with the knowledge and tools that they need to be able to prepare for, respond to, and recover from disasters they might experience. The work itself is done through a network of trusted messengers, including community-based organizations, tribal governments, could be community emergency or community teams who know how to reach those targeted audiences in their respective communities. The results from that initial pilot project that again started in 2019 really exhibited the value in directing a very deliberate focus on equity in protecting vulnerable and disadvantaged communities. Since that time, the state has now, and beginning in July 1 of 2022, began setting aside an ongoing allocation to bolster resiliency among the prioritized populations. We're very fortunate with this current round of funding that there are 93 grantees that have been funded and are serving directly in 47 of California's counties. So a really rich network of partners that are doing that work in the field, reaching those targeted audiences and doing so in a way that's really going to be meaningful and impactful to make sure that they are prepared and able to respond and recover for when disasters do occur. We're, as a result of that, really seeing a great expansion in the number of Californians that are prepared. Through this work, Listos will continue to learn from the experiences of all the grantees, learn from the impact that we're having on the community, to continue to improve and improve the strategies, improve the messages, improve the ways that we're reaching those audiences, and want to continue doing that moving forward. That leads us into now kind of this next grant opportunity. And I'm going to turn it over to Brian Ferguson, who is the Deputy Director for Crisis Communications and Public Affairs at Cal OES. And he's going to talk a little bit more about the overall philosophy and approach used by Listos California. And is also going to introduce some of these new funding opportunities that are available. So Brian, let me turn it over to you.
Thank you so much, Alan. And thank you for those of you who have joined us here today. Welcome back to those of you who are previous Listos participants, and welcome to those of you who may be joining us for the first time. This program, Listos California, is really one of the signature initiatives of Governor Newsom in terms of our disaster preparedness and how we support all Californians in staying safer and being more prepared for when the next disaster strikes. We understand that vulnerable Californians are disproportionately impacted by natural disasters and also human-caused disasters. And the idea behind this program is really a by community, for community approach to preparedness. And that's why we're so pleased to work with colleagues like Valley Vision, who are a community-based organization that are committed to social justice and working to protect and save lives and uplift our communities. And we're lucky, as Alan presented on the last slide, to have 93 organizations up and down the state who are participating in this year's cohort and really looking to continue that work in a long-term sustainable way going forward with having year in and year out funding opportunities for people who are in communities all across the state. We understand that perhaps people who look like me or work in law enforcement or are in the criminal justice world may not always be the most appropriate messengers to help get the word out or help people understand the steps they can do to take to be safe. Whereas the work that each of you do in your communities every single day that builds that support, that builds those relationships, is a powerful tool in helping to keep people safe. As we touched on, the power of peer-to-peer networks is something that we see over and over in disasters, that it's not posting on social media or sending out a wireless Amber Alert or even talking to the news media that convinces people to evacuate or take an emergency protective action. It's hearing from a faith leader in their community, an organization that they've done other work with, a neighbor, a colleague, a friend, and understanding what that looks like and how to move forward. And as we continue to develop this campaign, what we are committed to is looking at how do we do this year in and year out, particularly those of you who have worked with us and done incredible work in the past. How do we continue to grow that, right? And so one of the things that we're going to do this year, and we'll talk more about it in the slides to come, is build in co-development, because we want the way that we do Listos California to be brought to us by you, the people in the community who know best what the needs are for the unique populations you serve, the areas of the state you serve, and try to develop a curriculum that is people-centered in that way. Next slide, please. So, my colleague Karen is going to talk in a minute about, the specific funding opportunities that are available. But just at a high level, in terms of the values we hold, in terms of how we present these funding opportunities, we want funding to be available to all counties. No matter where you are in the state, you have some form of disaster risk. It's different if you live in our seaside communities than it is if you live in the mountains or an urban area versus a rural area. But no matter where you are in California, you have some risk of disaster. And we work to map that and make sure that there are resources available for every county. But we have a special focus on historically marginalized populations and the parts of our state that are most vulnerable to disasters. While we can't be sure where the next wildfire or earthquake will happen, what we do know is there are areas of our state that are more susceptible to these types of disasters. And we can overlay that information with where do people from certain census designated populations live, so we can try to push funding in the areas where it's needed most and where Californians may most be at risk. We understand and believe that your ability to survive a disaster should not be derived from the zip code you live in, nor should it be about the amount of money in your bank account, the language you speak, or how you identify. We should all have the opportunity to stay safe when the next disaster happens. And that's truly the root of Listos and our goal and vision here. Karen will talk more about this, but there are several different types of grants available for different types of organizations. We recognize that we have community-based organizations, we have tribal governments, and we have community emergency response teams that all do incredible work, but fit different needs within the community. And so we tried to devise a funding mechanism that supports all those communities in a specific way. And no matter what we do, every step of the way, Cal OES, Valley Vision, and all of our partners will be here to support you, providing technical assistance, resources, materials, guidance, and being to give you reach back into the state. Because there may be things that happen in your community that aren't specific to Listos, but you will always have a partner in us if there is an event that we're not anticipating that happens in your community, because we want this to be a two-way relationship. There's not us giving money and expecting something. It is building long-term lasting relationships in communities all across our state. And that's truly what this is all about. Can we go to the next slide? So about those funding opportunities. So we have $6 million for community-based organizations who are serving targeted populations. And Karen's going to talk to you a little bit about that in a second. $8 million for community organizations who are statewide partner populations. We'll define those terms for you in a second. But the general sense of it is either you're a large organization who's going to sub-grant to local partners across the state, or you're a smaller organization serving a specific community. And Karen will break that out, as well as our tribal governments. We've taken some feedback that you provided us from last year about tribal governments. And so we have fewer but larger grants available for tribal governments this year. We're also providing additional time for them to apply, because that's feedback that we received, that tribal governments have unique needs, and we want to work to do that. And then also our community emergency response teams, who are in many ways the backbone of this effort and are established in the communities across our state, work closely in many cases with local fire departments, and are volunteer-led, but are so valuable. You see some of them pictured actually up on the sign here. So they're a valuable part of this as well. So before I throw it to my colleague Karen, the other thing I just want to emphasize is what we're sharing with you today is the start of a process. So we want to go on this journey with you. We have some limitations in terms of what we can share, because we are now in a competitive grant process, and our colleague Cindy Logan from the Cal OES grants team will be on today. We can speak at a high level about the programs available, but there may be some very specific questions that we can't answer just because it may advantage people and how they apply for this money. We do want to be competitive and fair and all above board under the state's procurement and grant monitoring processes. Cindy will also share with you, because it can be highly technical in applying for a grant, that they actually have an upcoming webinar tomorrow that gives you more specificity on the actual grant application process. So today we'll talk to you about our values, talk to you about the program at a high level, and then going forward, we will work closely with you in terms of providing education on how to apply so that you can meet the deadlines and be a partner with us in the months to come. With that, I'm going to throw it back to Alan.
All right. Thank you very much, Brian. And that was a great overview and introduction of Listos California, the culture, the purpose, really the foundation of what it is. So very, very helpful. We are now going to go into a little bit more detail. So I'm going to introduce Karen Navarro, the Listos California Program Manager from California Office of Emergency Services. She's going to go into some of the detail about the priority populations that we're looking to serve through the Listos California project, and then a little bit more detail as well about each one of those grant opportunities to provide you all with that familiarity and awareness so that you can best target how this might fit for you and your organization. So with that, Karen, if we can introduce you.
Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Brian. Yes, so as Brian was mentioning, we do have target population that Listos California focuses on, and it really is about reaching those vulnerable communities, underserved communities, and historically marginalized populations. So that focus population that Listos California supports would be immigrants and refugees, farm workers, people with disabilities, seniors, older adults, individuals and families experiencing homelessness, areas with geographically isolated individuals or families with low broadband subscription, and of course, households with limited English proficiency. As many of you know, we have a large resource of various language materials that are available on our website. So that's our priority population. And if we can go to the next slide, please. So we'll talk about the 4 different types of grants that are available. Brian spoke a bit about them, and I'll just go a little bit more into detail about each one. So the target grants, there's $6 million allocated for the target grants. This is really for smaller local nonprofit organizations with a 501c3 status with a service population of less than 1 million. The funding availability for the target grants is up to $300,000 for the 19-month performance period. So there's different levels of award tiers. And as you can see there, it depends on how many the organization is planning to engage. So if the engaging is more than 75,000, you may receive up to 300,000. And as it increases 50 to 74,999, 250,000 is the possibility, and so forth. Of course, all this information is included on each of the requests for proposals information that can be found through our Cal OES website, as well as through the grants portal. And for the target grants, the deadline for this application is Monday, March 20th. So if we can go to the next slide. All right, so the statewide targets. That one has an allocation of $8 million. This is for a larger nonprofit organization with a population servicing more than 1 million, or more work that can be done independently or to subgrant with local community-based organizations. So the available funding is $500,000 for the 19-month period. And as you can see, the different tiers depending on the engaging numbers of the population that each organization plans to present to. So it's 500,000 or more may receive up to 500,000, 350 to 499, 999, up to 400,000, and so forth. The deadline, similar to the target, is March 20th. And again, all this information is available on the grants portal. So I believe the next grant slide is for tribal governments. So it's for 1 million is the availability. And of course, this is for federally recognized tribal government with administrative offices in California, with a goal to increase the community's disaster preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation capabilities. The funding available for applicants may be up to $200,000 for the 19th month performance period. And this grant does have a little bit longer extension. So this would be for March 27th, 2023. Next slide, please. All right, so our CERT programs, our community emergency response teams have availability of 500,000 funding. Of course, with the CERT programs registered, they must be registered through the Federal Emergency Management Agency through FEMA. Can be a new CERT program approved by the California State CERT Administrator, CERT program sponsoring agencies, or a fiscal agent representing the CERT program to support projects that help prepare vulnerable and underserved populations. So as mentioned, the applicants may be available for up to $25,000 for the 19-month performance period. And the deadline for the CERT programs is March 20th. So I believe the next slide is just talks a little bit just as a snapshot of the deadlines and more information on availability through the California Grants portal, and the award date that we have would be June 1st, 2023. And I just want to take a moment to talk a little bit about this new dedicated team. This is the team that I lead. It's really the Listos California program team. And this team is a new team in that we are dedicated working directly with the Listos California partners, which we work with many of you, our current cohort right now. We are your primary point of contact on program related matters. And we've been, fascinated receiving all the information that you are sharing, our cohorts, regarding engagement and outreach that you're doing in your community. So we monitor that because we want to see the success of this program and work hand in hand with you on how to best support you in your local communities. Through those engagement activities, we do program check-ins, again, to see how we can best support you with what resources you need, what areas that need for improvement. And as Brian said earlier, it's a two-way street to learning how we can best support your communities. And as we just learned, earlier mentioned during the severe winter timeframe that we had, we worked hand in hand during disaster response, which we look forward to continuing that partnership during emergencies and how we can best partner together. So that is the team that I lead, and look forward to working with you in the next round and in our current round as well. So thank you so much, and sending it back to Alan.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Karen. Very good information. Hopefully it provides all those who are participating in the briefing today with a glimpse into how it might best fit, how the Listos California might best fit with your particular purpose of your agency, which grant opportunity might be most appropriate. And that leads us to our next slide. And I'm going to introduce Cindy Logan, who is the Community Resiliency and Listos California Grants Division Chief for Cal OES. And she will be talking a little bit about some of the, tomorrow, some of the training that Cal OES is organizing to help talk in more detail about the actual application proposal process, what that looks like. So Cindy, if I can turn it over to you.
Thank you, Alan. Hi, everyone. I'm Cindy Logan, and I just wanted to let everyone know that we will be having a training on the request for proposal and form training tomorrow, February 16th. We'll have three trainings. One will be for the statewide and target CBOs from 10 to 11. The second one is the tribal governments from 1:30 to 2:30, and the CERT programs will be from 3 to 4 p.m. The training will provide a general overview of the Listos California Grant Program and instructions on how to complete the application forms. For those of you that would like to go to this training, please email listosgrants@caloes.ca.gov, and we will send you an invite to the MS Teams trainings. So hopefully I will see all of you there tomorrow.
Terrific. Thank you, Cindy. Again, just want to emphasize, if you think you might be of benefit to participate in any of those trainings, you see that email address at the bottom of the screen, the listosgrants@caloes.ca.gov. Send a note there if you want to register for any one of these trainings, again, taking place tomorrow. So thank you very much for that, Cindy. I know that those will be extremely valuable for those that are wanting to complete a grant proposal. So that actually concludes the presentation portion of the meeting briefing today. With the remaining minutes that we have, we did want to try to field some of the questions that are coming in through the Q&A function. So for that, I am going to introduce Diana Cross-Palayo, the Assistant Director of Crisis Communications and Public Affairs at Cal OES. And she will lead some of those questions, and we'll hopefully get some answers from the most relevant party who you've heard from today. So Diana, what types of questions came in that we could share with the group today?
Thanks so much, Alan. You guys are all asking really wonderful questions. And so let me start off with a few. We've gotten a few questions on engagement and what does that really look like? I'm going to hand it over maybe to Brian Ferguson, who can talk to us about what a meaningful engagement means for this campaign.
Yeah, thank you for the person who asked the question. Engagements is actually how we measure success in this campaign. This isn't the population you serve. These are the actual number of individuals who you have a meaningful interaction with. And we'll share with you, we've created a definition of what an engagement is. What it's not buying social media clicks and saying those counts as engagements. It could be tabling at the farmer's market, holding a training, doing outreach events in your community, going door to door and talking to people and handing out literature. And so, the goal of it is basically setting a marker, and then we can work with you each month, which allows us to see both the success of how it's going and also to continue to advocate for support long term. Since this year's Listos effort got underway, we've had more than 500,000 engagements in just over 6 months. And we're able to measure that actually at the CBO level. And so that'll actually be part of the work you would do with us, is logging the engagements that you do each month. We don't ask you to collect information from who you talk to, because we don't want people to be fearful or not want to share information with you. But we're asking you to keep a tally. If you go to that farmer's market, you talk to people there, how many people did you talk to? What did you hand it out to them? And so we've created different tiers depending on the number of people you want to engage. And we've actually tried to scale it in such a way that we understand that some very hard to reach populations maybe cost more money in terms of your time, your efforts, in order to reach those individuals than less hard to reach populations. And so we've tried to create a sliding scale so that no matter what the population you serve, there could be a tier in which you can fit the type of work that you do. We saw there's a question there if you don't serve that minimum amount. We've also tried to set it up in such a way so that a larger CBO can go in as a prime and then sub out to smaller CBOs who may be able to micro-target in a meaningful way. The other thing that we're working on, and we're not talking about it here today, but there's a slice of pie this year in the Listos campaign that's actually micro grants and grant writing training that look for more to come for that in the future about how to apply for other grant opportunities with the state, or also leverage philanthropic support at a more micro level. And so that's one of the things that we heard loud and clear from people who applied last year is some of you do very community-centric, targeted work that may not put up those numbers, but what opportunities are available for you. So that's something we've developed as well, and look for more on that. And it could be training that helps maybe not folks on this call, but other folks who may be interested in applying next year understand how to work with the state and how to engage with us. We understand that applying for state grants is not always a straightforward process because of all the laws and requirements we have, but we want to break down barriers to the extent we can and demystify it and share with you how to access funding, whether it's through this grant or through any other grants at Cal OES. In addition to Listos, Cindy and her team oversees over $1 billion in grants. So we push out for everything from homelessness to sexual assault prevention to child poverty to gun violence prevention. So those other opportunities are available while you visit our website to look at Listos. You may wish to see if there's other opportunities that may fit your organization there as well.
Thank you for that, Brian. I've been frantically answering questions in the chat as well. I'm going to call up maybe Cindy Logan just to answer. There's a few questions on requirements, and it might be helpful just to reiterate to folks, like specifically for the statewide and the target, what the requirement is, for example, being a 501c3 nonprofit. Do you mind elaborating just a bit, Cindy?
Sure. So are you asking about a 501c? What is a 501c3 nonprofit?
Folks are asking about the requirement to apply. So for example, they're like, hey, I'm a this, I'm a that, am I eligible? And so I think ultimately, like for statewide and target, it is for 501c3s, correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, awesome. And then there are a few questions too on, hey, I'm a current Listos partner in this second cohort. Can I apply for this next round? Can they, Cindy?
Yes, they can apply for this round as well.
Okay, wonderful. Really appreciate that. We're getting also a few questions in regards to, hey, is there a match requirement? Like, do I need to match my funds to what you guys are handing out in grants? Cindy, do you mind answering that one as well?
Okay, that's a good question. No, there's no match. This is state funded and there is no match to this program.
Super helpful. Thank you so much. I would really love if we could put maybe the slide up that talked about the timeframes for folks to apply. We're getting lots of questions and I'm not able to kind of copy and paste it over to see. So you can kind of see there on the slide that for targeted, statewide, and CERT, you have until March 20th. Tribal governments have until the 27th. And then We have another question too, Cindy, if you don't mind. Some folks have a conflict maybe tomorrow for your training. Is it going to be recorded?
That's a good question too. Yes, it will be recorded, and you can go ahead and send an email to us at listosgrants@caloes.ca.gov, and we can go ahead and send the video to you. Otherwise, we will be uploading it as well on our Cal OES website.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much. I'm looking at, there's quite a few more questions. A lot of questions on whether folks can reapply. Yes, you definitely can. And then Cindy, let's say folks can't make it tomorrow, and I know you'll have the recording. Are you anticipating maybe further trainings in the future?
On the actual RFP and the forms, we are going to do the training tomorrow, so it will be recorded. We can go ahead and send that out to you once it has been recorded, or you can go ahead and send all of your questions to us. We do have somebody manned at the inbox at listosgrants@caloes.ca.gov. We do get back to you quickly, no later than 24 hours if we're researching a question for you, but we do answer those very quickly because we understand that you guys need to get a quick response so that you guys can complete your applications.
Thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to Brian. Getting a question here on what types of disasters or disaster risk can be included as part of the work of a Listos California partner.
Yeah, this is a good question. And, obviously the disasters are going to be unique to the type of areas that you serve. But what we do and we provide you with is curriculum and materials on disaster preparedness. And our hope is that you all just continue to do preparedness work throughout this campaign. But we know that if there are disasters in your area and we have to do response or recovery, as we saw with the winter storms, having people who are already in each community doing that outreach becomes so valuable. We had, thank you, shout out to Catholic Charities for their work in the Central Valley when we had resource centers during the flooding. And so, fingers crossed that we have blue skies and no events and that you're just continuing to do preparedness training. But the idea is that if an event does happen in your area, you now become a trusted messenger, and we would work closely with you on the specific needs of what's happening. A flood fire came through Butte County. How can we work to do this work to support the community? And we have gobs of material for all of these, whether it be social media content, flyers, outreach toolkits that we'll share throughout the year. The idea is that we want to provide you a baseline, and if you want to go beyond that by doing something that's more specific to your type of work, or may have a little bit more detail based on what's happening in your community, you could evolve that. But I think the 4 disasters that we called out in the RFPs are wildfires, earthquakes, floods, and extreme heat, which is really the new disaster that we see on the horizon as our climate warms and we continue to see more challenges, particularly among the vulnerable Californians. Heat is really a killer we're looking out for.
Thanks, Brian. We're getting a few questions about the current cohort of Listos grantees. I'm going to also simultaneously type in the answer, but do you want to send folks over to where we have the atlas of information?
Sure. One of the things we want to do is strive to be transparent with well, it is, so you can actually look up and search by county the folks who are current grantees at the Listos Outlet Atlas, which is on the OES website, the Listos website. We'll also put here in the chat. And that our hope is that in the future, that's more public and you can actually drill down from the Listos website to find who's in your community if you're a member of the public and want to get involved or get information. And that continues to be an area for improvement as we go forward, and that, lifting you all up as the trusted people in your community beyond the emergency managers as a resource for people who are either looking for information about how to stay safe should a disaster happen, or a resource when disasters are happening to collaborate with in the event of an emergency.
Thanks, Brian. A few questions too on preparedness, response, and recovery efforts. I think some folks are remembering that kind of in the first iteration of Listos, it was all things preparedness, and now we're also bringing in kind of response and recovery efforts in there too. Do you want to talk a little bit about how about that change and how important it is for the program?
One of the things we found is actually the most valuable part of Listos is having people deeply embedded with those relationships in the community when something happens. And so when Listos was originally conceived, it was the governor put it out as a preparedness curriculum. But what we learned during COVID-19 is that all of you, those of you who participated during it, or that first group of grantees, actually became the first line of defense about getting information out about protective measures, whether it's masks, vaccines when they became available. And we learned during that experience of COVID is that having you in the community is invaluable during a disaster. And so as we move forward, we wanted to expand Listos to be inclusive of all phases of disasters, which is the before, the during, and the after. Because even the after, in many cases, is where it's more important now than ever to provide those resources. Where can people sign up for financial assistance? If they lost their home, what resources do they have? We don't actually expect you as grantees to know that. We know that, but having that reach into the community or to serve as navigators or trusted partners, and this worked incredibly well during the floods, which tragically killed 21 people, but could have been so much worse. The president and the National Federal Emergency Management Agency administrator visited on the ground. They visited Merced, and Santa Cruz, where we had disaster recovery centers, which included Listos grantees participating. And they actually told us that they believe this is a national model for how to protect vulnerable populations and get them resources after a disaster. So we continue to want to harness that ability. And the idea is not that you go it alone, it's that we support you. And if something happens, then we work closely with the county and with you to help build those relationships and use you as a conduit to get information out to those who need it.
Thank you so much, Brian. There's also a question in regards to what languages do you have materials in? I defer to Brian or Alan to answer this question of current resources available to folks who are interested.
Alan, you want to take it?
Yeah, and I apologize. I'm probably not going to get everyone because I'm not looking at the sheet in front of me, but to the question's point, providing language or providing materials that are in language is critically important and is something that throughout the lifetime of Listos California has been prioritized. There has been a look of what are the languages most spoken throughout California, particularly those that are in high hazard areas, those that are most risk for natural disaster. So we're trying to mirror what those languages are. Also, though, taking feedback from grantees themselves. What are the populations that they're serving? Who's in their community that they need to reach out to? Again, it's not going to be a comprehensive list, but languages where we do have materials available now include Spanish, Chinese, Korean, Hmong, Vietnamese, Russian, Punjabi, Arabic, and there are a few others that I'm not immediately coming to mind right now, but we have about a dozen different languages. And depending on what the materials are, some of that might be dependent on what languages they get produced in as well, but do want to continue to maximize that so that we are having in-language materials for those audiences that are available. And as I said, look for feedback as well. So if we need to expand out, we know why, we know kind of what that population looks like, where they live, what's going to be the kind of the best place to get those materials out. So always looking to continue to evolve that, and language is a critically important piece of the campaign.
Thank you so much, Alan. Brian, I'm gonna maybe throw another question over to you. So getting a few more questions in regards to engagements and, saying, hey, but our county only has X amount of people. And so maybe talking about the difference between an engagement versus a person. I think engagements are are a little bit different, right? Versus reaching every single person. If you don't mind explaining that.
Yeah, and this is also, again, why we have the different types of grants that are, place-based as well as space-based, in terms of where you are or the population you serve. And so, when we talk about engagements, we want it to be a meaningful engagement, that it isn't just, putting a flyer to someone and never talking again, or buying Facebook ads, which is like what we've seen in other state campaigns. We actually want this to be meaningful education that lasts. And so there's a lot of different ways to do it, and we'll provide you training about, some of the ways that we've seen that are successful. And then you'll have, fully 19 months to do these engagements, right? And so it's over a period of time that you'll be able to do it. And so, kind of thinking through, and that's one of the things you should think about in terms of where you're going to apply, what population can you reasonably reach during that period of time? And also what partners might you need, right? Like, might you need to either be a sub or a sub to someone else to help do that work, and help build up those, sort of relationships that allow you to do the outreach and education in a meaningful way. I like the way we do this. It could be that someone attends a training and that you also see them at the farmer's market. We will count that as 2 engagements because you've done 2 activities. Obviously want to be thoughtful that we're not gaming the system in any way about that. But what we want is to have a metric so we can celebrate your successes and show that there's need for more funding, because we'd like to go even further in terms of the work that we do. And so the engagements are a key part of that, and having metrics to show success is how we keep doing this work, particularly in a budget environment that may be tightening. And, we showed people that 500,000 engagements in 6 months, and the legislature just was overjoyed. So that's another reasons why we track that way, and also to hold accountable, right? We think the vast majority of our grantees do incredible work. Some of them maybe get in over their head or may not be up to the task. And so what we want is for those of you who are doing it right, engagements also allow us to understand you're doing great work. We want to continue to fund you year over year versus maybe people who did not meet the requirements in the year to come.
Thank you, Brian. I'm going to shoot it. We'll maybe take 1 or 2 more questions. I'm going to shoot it over to Karen Navarro. Specifically, I know Brian kind of touched on some of the what an engagement looks like, what folks are doing out in the field, but maybe Karen could give us a better understanding of, what have our partners been doing, some really good tangible examples of the work that they've been doing in the community currently, just to kind of engage people's creativity there.
Yeah, absolutely. And we love seeing the success stories of the outreach that our current partners are doing. And so we receive your information, the table events that you're having, being out in the community, sharing those disaster ready guides. And, sometimes they're as small as 10, we've seen some that as big as, 200. So there's a lot of great work being done with our community partners in sharing that preparedness information. And we are always looking at it for those success stories and how we can best support the resources and the materials that you need, as well as other ideas of outreach, right? Because there's so many different ways that can be done, and there's so much great work being reported already to us. And it's something that we do monitor and track, and we get to see it live. As you're inputting it, we're able to see it on a daily. So thank you to all those that are participating on that.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Karen. And with that, we're going to wrap it up. I'm going to throw it back over to Alan, but one thing before I do that is definitely want to let people know, remind them about the training tomorrow, so that they can kind of come in and ask some of those more detailed questions. And then also during the course of this application period, we will be taking in some of those frequently asked questions and updating a document so you guys can see the answers all together. You can see some of our FAQs are already online, but we're happy to add more to them. So feel free to ask away, and we'll add to that Word document. I'm going to hand it back over to Alan to wrap.
All right. Thank you very much, Deanna. So on the screen, I'll just note little plug. So following Listos California, you can see a variety of different social media or website where you can go to get more information, stay up to date, hear what new materials that might be coming out, other things, all sources that you can access. So feel free to follow those. Encourage you to follow those. Actually, want to those we actually, as we close, really thank everybody that joined us today. Really great turnout, number of community-based organizations, CERT program representatives, tribal governments, others that have joined us today. Very, very promising for what is still to come with Listos California. As has been said a couple times in this presentation, the success really hinges on the ability to get into the communities, those that too often have been underserved, underrepresented in getting information to them. So knowing that there is this variety of community-based organizations and others who are out there who really want to get this information out, who have are considered the trusted messengers in their communities. Very, very promising of what is still going to come for Listos California, and making sure that all of our residents are prepared for disaster, are able to respond when disaster strikes, and are able to recover after disaster and get back to some degree of normalcy for themselves, for their families, for their communities in as rapid period of time as possible. So really thank you all, and encourage you to attend the more detailed training tomorrow on the kind of the how-to of submitting that grant opportunity. And hopefully we'll continue to be engaged with you all as Listos California continues forward. So thank you all, and enjoy the rest of your afternoon.